Japan and South Korea say they'll consider the contentious issue of comfort women sex slaves to be finally resolved after striking a deal aimed at ending decades of tension. An estimated 200,000 women, many of them Korean, were forced to be sex slaves for Japanese soldiers during World War II. But the agreement has drawn anger from Korean activists and opposition groups, saying it doesn't go far enough. Robert Kelly is an associate professor of political science at Busan National University in South Korea, and he joins us live now. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Firstly, give us an idea of how big a step this is for the two countries, because the issue of comfort women or sex slaves has been a long-running one that's been a thorn in the side of relations between the two countries.
Yeah, that's right. It has been for a long time, since at least the early 90s, although there were rumors even before that. The two sides have really had a great deal of difficulty coming to any kind of agreed language upon this. There were several declarations in the past, but those were always sort of undercut by various statesmen and political figures, particularly on the Japanese side, saying, well, we didn't exactly mean this and this and that. And so this is one of the reasons why the Koreans have been so tough on pushing this issue, right? They want some kind of unity from the Japanese government on this. And it got to the point under this president, the current president of South Korea, Park Geun-hye, that she simply refused to meet with Prime Minister Abe of Japan until some kind of working level arrangement was made on this thing. And there's been a great deal of pressure by the Americans in the background too. But I mean, it was really becoming a huge issue in the relation to the two states. I mean, people were spending enormous amounts of time on it. It even got to the American president's desk, which was fairly extraordinary.
That's right. And of course, in terms of the deal itself, the Japanese government has agreed to pay around $8 million to a compensation fund. It's unreservedly apologised for the issue of comfort women, but it also, the agreement also says that the issue is effectively put to bed, that neither country will talk about the issue any longer. But this agreement has attracted the ire and the condemnation of some in South Korea. Why are they against this?
That's right. I mean, I'm actually kind of surprised that the South Koreans took this deal. I think in the eyes of many South Koreans, it will be seen as too lenient. The South Koreans have really, like I said, they've actually turned this to a very large, substantial issue in their sort of national collective consciousness. It's taught in history books. The comfort women themselves are sort of held up as these important moral figures in Korean history. The South Korean government even printed the placement of a comfort women statue in front of the Japanese embassy, which has attracted enormous criticism back in Tokyo. So I was actually quite surprised that the South Koreans took a deal that was somewhat lenient, but they did not. And this is where I think it's going to be controversial in the coming month or so, is that it looks like, we're not sure, that the South Korean government did not consult the comfort women groups or the non-governmental organizations that have really pushed this issue so hard. And my big concern, my curiosity for the future is, how will these groups respond? We already know that the largest comfort women group has issued a declaration saying that this is not acceptable. They don't like it. Now, that group only represents about 30 to 40% of the comfort women, right? We're not really sure what everyone else thinks. But the Park government doesn't seem to have laid the groundwork for this, so I'm wondering if there's going to be a backlash.
Why do you think that is? I mean, you would think that the first step would be to bring those groups on board, the victim support groups on board, to any sort of a deal. Why do you think the South Korean government didn't do this?
Well, that's actually a good question. It's actually not really quite clear to me. I do think that some of the comfort women groups their demands on Japan have gotten to the point that there was simply no way the Japanese were ever going to concede to them. And I think my guess is, we're not sure, my guess is that one of the things that the Japanese demanded in these negotiations is that some of the more extreme groups, some of the more radical comfort women groups and sort of Korean nationalist groups, anti-Japan groups, whatever you want to call them, were locked out of the process. Like I said, I think that will make it harder to sell the deal, but that may have made it easier to actually clinch the deal to begin with. The trick now is whether or not President Park can sway sort of the moderate middle. You're going to have nationalists who simply will not accept the deal. There will be rejectionists who will not take any language of any kind, right? The question is whether she can actually move public opinion enough that this deal sticks and survives her presidency into the next one. That's the big question. When she leaves office in 18 months, 2 years, right, will her predecessor or her successor stick to this or not?
You mentioned the division over language. I'm curious, we've referred to this issue as the so-called comfort women issue, but is comfort women simply a euphemism that's used by the Japanese to refer to, I guess, the more seedier element, the more sinister element of sex slavery? Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's actually a really, really good question. It gets to the really sort of thorny heart of this thing, right? The comfort women, yeah, I would agree. The comfort women, the term really is sort of a euphemism. That's a Japanese term. The Koreans do not actually refer to these women as such. They refer to them as sex slaves enforced prostitution and things like that. Yeah, and there's a sort of open question right now. It is sort of up for debate right now, just how many of these women were actually coerced, were there actually Korean brokers and stuff like that. This is actually a very, very hot, roiling issue in Korea right now. But the general consensus is that yes, that these women were coerced, and that the Japanese are sort of trying to step around that with the euphemisms and everything else. And this is one of the reasons why I'm kind of surprised that the Koreans took the deal. I mean, if you actually read the agreement, it doesn't actually use the term sex at all, which is actually, I'm kind of shocked that the Park government accepted this, but we'll just have to see how the NGOs respond. I wonder if they're going to hit the streets in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, Robert Kelly, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you again for your time tonight.
Thank you for having me.